Hello, world, and welcome to the In My Footsteps podcast. I am Christopher Setterland, coming to you from the vacation destination known as Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and this is episode 222. We're coming out of the food coma from Thanksgiving, we're diving headlong into the holiday season of December, and I've got loads of GenX nostalgia already under the tree for you. We're going to kick it off with a look back at the life and times of the OG, the heavy metal legend himself, Ozzy Osbourne. We're going to learn how to be good employees at Subway in the early 1990s thanks to their employee training video. You may also laugh and shake your head. There'll be a brand new top 5 looking back a few days late from Thanksgiving at the biggest Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade mishaps, a lot of balloons going rogue. And there'll be a brand new This Week in History and time capsule looking back at a time that a person was actually hit by a falling meteorite. All of that is coming up right now on episode 222 of the In My Footsteps podcast. All right, so are you awake? Have you gotten out of the food coma? We are just past Thanksgiving. We are staring down all the holidays, Christmas, and the like. Thank you all for tuning in to episode 222. I hope that you have had the best holiday season so far. I'm going to add to it here, hopefully. I do have to get out of my food coma and wake up a little. Ooh, there we go. Now I've got no excuse to not be with it and sound quite coherent, maybe. We've got a lot of fun stuff to get into this week. That Subway video, you're going to love it. But of course, I cannot get started with the podcast without thanking my Patreon subscribers, Lori, Mary Lou, Ashley, Kevin, Leo, Marguerite, Neglectoid, Crystal, Matt, Dr. Shrimp, Porto Chico. Thank you all so much for being my biggest backers. Those of you that actually put your money where your mouth is to support me, my never-ending dream of being a self-employed content creator. You too can support me by becoming a member on Patreon for $5 a month. You get access to bonus podcast episodes, one of which went up just a few days ago. They go up on the first of the month. You also get access to the remastered Without a Map live streams. I've got other things coming this month, kind of holiday gifts. The Initial Impressions 2.0 2025 retrospective video. All of the foolishness, the top 20, I would say, most foolish things that happened to me this year. I've also got something new that I don't know when I'm going to debut this. Maybe this month, maybe to start the new year. But coming soon for you subscribers on Patreon are going to be another kind of podcast. I can't think of the name of them yet. It's either going to be Hidden Tracks or Rad Rewind or something like that. They're going to be shorter, 10 minutes, maybe a little bit more, where I dive into something that I've probably talked about on the podcast before, but I give it a little more attention. So for example, a lot of these are from my top 5 lists. You'll notice that in those, it's a minute, maybe 2, I speak on a subject. So these podcasts, I'm going to dive deeper into them. Something like the OK Soda from the 90s, or the Pitfall Atari game, or Hee Haw Soda that made me laugh so much. So they're kind of like mini deep dives into things that I've spoken about, but I want to flesh out more. Those are going to be on Patreon for subscribers. Although I will hold the right to possibly make them canon with this podcast, because I'm trying to find new ways to add other bits of content to what I do. But with only so much time in the day, it's hard. But I'll get more into those as they come up. I will let you know when the first one goes up on Patreon. I might make that one free to entice people to sign up. But enough housekeeping. Let's defeat the food coma from Thanksgiving together, and let's start off episode 222 with a look back at the life and times of the legend himself, the king of heavy metal, Ozzy Osbourne. On July 22nd, 2025, legendary heavy metal singer, frontman, pop culture icon Ozzy Osbourne passed away at the age of 76. Back then, over the summer, you couldn't turn around without seeing an incredible amount of powerful and emotional tributes from everyone in music, entertainment, fans around the world. I had thought at the time about scrapping my plans for a podcast and doing a segment on Ozzy, but then I decided to take a little different approach. Rather than mourning his death, I figured I would celebrate his life, and so today, when the podcast goes live, December 3rd, is Ozzy Osbourne's birthday. So Ozzy would have turned 77 today, and I figured, why not celebrate his life? There are very few figures in the history of rock music, heavy metal music, that have left as deep and wide a cultural impact as Ozzy, from his working-class childhood in Birmingham, England, to fronting one of the most influential heavy metal bands of all time, to reinventing himself. It's crazy to think that Ozzy's career spanned more than 50 years, and I guarantee you that there's different segments of you listening who have different memories of Ozzy depending on when you first were acquainted with him. I'm sure there are some of you that know him from his Black Sabbath days. There are some of you that know him from the beginning of his solo career. And then there's younger ones that know him from the Osbournes reality show. There really is no wrong answer when it comes to whatever your feeling is about the greatest contribution to pop culture that Ozzy Osbourne had. Ozzy was the fourth of 6 children born to a poor but close-knit family in Birmingham, England on December 3rd, 1948. Dyslexia and bullying made school difficult, but the creative outlets, particularly his singing, gave him direction. Classmates gave him the nickname Ozzy early in his life. His childhood upbringing was modest. They had no indoor bathroom, limited resources. His dad worked long factory shifts. But Ozzy constantly credited his parents, especially his father, as grounding forces and moral compasses despite their financial struggles. As a teenager, Ozzy cycled through various jobs, even briefly landing in jail for burglary, a moment that he later called a wake-up call. Around this time in the late 1960s, inspired by the Beatles and their monumental cultural impact, Ozzy committed himself to pursuing a career in music. It was in 1968 that Ozzy joined forces with guitarist Tony Iommi, bassist Geezer Butler, and drummer Bill Ward to form a band they initially called Earth. After renaming themselves Black Sabbath, the group leaned more into darker themes, foreboding soundscapes, heavy, blues-rooted style that would revolutionize rock. Their self-titled album, released in 1970, is often considered the birth of heavy metal, with tracks like Black Sabbath and NIB. Black Sabbath pioneered a new musical vocabulary with ominous riffs, down-tuned guitar, and theatrical gloom. You can't overstate the importance of that initial run with Black Sabbath, basically creating a genre of music. It's one thing to come into music and become a star in rock, pop, jazz, blues, hip-hop. It's another thing altogether to come into music and create your own form of it. The self-titled album was just the beginning. With Ozzy as the frontman, Black Sabbath released a string of genre-defining albums. Paranoid in 1970 might be the most well-known, with War Pigs, Iron Man, Paranoid. These are songs that hold up so well today, 55 years later. Just imagine when they first came out and there was nothing to compare it to. They also had albums Master of Reality in 1971, Volume 4 in 1972, and Sabbath Bloody Sabbath in 1973. Ozzy and Black Sabbath, they are instantly recognizable. Ozzy's haunting nasally vocal style that provided a surreal contrast to the crushing instrumentation. That's another thing when it comes to being a singer for 50 years. Ozzy's voice basically sounded the same until his last concert this past July. Think about all the other famous big-time singers of, the last 50, 60 years and how their voices have changed. The most glaring one I always come up with is Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin, who had this incredible, amazing, almost operatic voice, and he didn't take care of it, and now today, he doesn't sound anything like he did with Led Zeppelin. By the late 1970s, internal tensions and heavy substance abuse affected the band's cohesion. In 1979, Ozzy was dismissed from Black Sabbath, which was a blow that easily could have ended his career. But instead, it created his most enduring chapter, his rebirth as a solo artist. After leaving Sabbath, Ozzy teamed with manager Sharon Arden, who he later married, and formed a new backing band. The result was the 1980 album Blizzard of Oz, which featured the classics Crazy Train and Mr. Crowley. This revived Ozzy's career and introduced virtuoso guitarist Randy Rhoads. Sadly, 2 years later, in 1982, Rhoads was killed in a freak plane crash while on tour. The loss devastated Ozzy personally and artistically, yet he continued recording and touring with a succession of talented guitarists, including Zakk Wylde. His solo run is every bit as important as his run with Sabbath, with the other albums Diary of a Madman in 1981, Bark at the Moon in 1983, The Ultimate Sin in 1986, No Rest for the Wicked in 1988, No More Tears in 1991. This was the era where Ozzy cultivated his image as the Prince of Darkness, with stories like the biting the head off of the bat on stage. During his solo run, that's where I came into the picture as far as finding out who Ozzy was. He was terrifying at first with the big wild eyes, and he had the long, stringy blonde hair at the time, and he was a little, not chunky, but he had more of a rounder face than he would have later in life. And so, kind of a funny thing, the first Ozzy song that I heard and that didn't immediately terrify me because I was a kid then is the If I Close My Eyes Forever duet he did with Lita Ford. Because I was like, well, it is kind of dark, but it is a love song. So maybe Ozzy's not as scary as I thought on things like Shot in the Dark or Bark at the Moon or Crazy Train. The irony is the fact that even though that song was a little bit of a departure for Ozzy, If I Close My Eyes Forever, it was his highest charting song, his only top 10. For Ozzy Osbourne, just the music he created wasn't enough. He has left such a lasting legacy, and that is seen in the phenomenon of Ozzfest. Ozzy and Sharon created this festival in the mid-1990s, and it became a major touring festival that shaped the landscape of modern rock and metal. It launched or boosted the careers of such bands as Slipknot, System of a Down, Disturbed, and Marilyn Manson. There have been hundreds of millions of dollars made by Ozzfest. Millions of people have gone to these shows. I couldn't find the most modern numbers, but as of 2003's Ozzfest tours, the highest grossing show was from June 30th, 2001, making $2.2 million for that show, featuring Black Sabbath, Marilyn Manson, Slipknot, Papa Roach, Linkin Park. I love the fact I look back and in 1998, Foo Fighters played some shows on Ozzfest tour. So you've got Black Sabbath, you've got his solo run, you've got the creation of Ozzfest. Ozzy Osbourne right there is cemented as one of the biggest icons in the history of music. But then comes an unexpected reinvention. In 2002, MTV premiered The Osbournes, a reality show that documented the chaotic and humorous and often tender and sweet family life of Ozzy, Sharon, Jack, and Kelly. I remember this being appointment viewing in my house. For my stepfather, he grew up with Black Sabbath. For me, it was Ozzy, the solo run, the later 80s. So I didn't have the same reference point as him seeing Ozzy as this like wacky grandpa guy. But what the Osbourne show did was it reshaped the public image of Ozzy from this sinister, foreboding, spooky metal icon to a somewhat confused, lovable, almost like a cartoon patriarch. It made you laugh, but it also highlighted Ozzy's vulnerabilities, his struggles with addiction, and his genuine affection for his family. Ozzy Osbourne won an Emmy for that show. And despite all of the laughs with the stuff that Ozzy would do and say, he could still make music and immediately be the Prince of Darkness again. In his last few years, he released albums like Black Rain in 2007, Scream in 2010, Patient Number 9 in 2022, and the highly acclaimed Ordinary Man from 2020, which featured Elton John, Slash, and Post Malone. Eventually, though, the health issues caught up to Ozzy. Parkinson's, spinal injuries, but he would not give up performing. On July 5th, 2025, there was a farewell concert called Back to the Beginning, held at Villa Park in Birmingham, England. There were approximately 45,000 people in attendance. Ozzy performed from a big black throne. Black Sabbath performed. You had Guns N' Roses, Metallica, Tool, Pantera, Alice in Chains, Slayer. Ozzy knew he was near the end, and he got to go out with one of the greatest farewell shows, one of the greatest farewells ever in entertainment. For those who missed it, the concert will be released in theaters as a part of a documentary early next year. Incredibly, Ozzy Osbourne died only 17 days after that concert. When you look back at Ozzy's life and career, his legacy is almost immeasurable. He's the pioneer of heavy metal. He's a unique vocal icon. He's a survivor and symbol of resilience. He's a cultural figure beyond music. He's a mentor to new artists. And then, possibly above all else, is his family legacy. Ozzy is a pioneer who helped invent a genre. His life is a tapestry of contradictions, outrage and sincerity, darkness and humor, chaos and artistry. His legacy is not only in the music he created, but in the authenticity with which he lived. Ozzy always was who he was, and that was it. And the Prince of Darkness may be gone, but he will always remain unmistakably a legend. This week in history, we are going back 71 years to November 30th, 1954, and the story of Anne Hodges, who was hit by a meteorite. This was a story that I found in passing, and so there's no way I can not put this on the podcast. It's the definition of strange but true. So, on an otherwise quiet afternoon in rural Alabama in 1954, a woman named Anne Elizabeth Fowler Hodges, who was 34 years old, living in the small town of Oak Grove in Alabama, became the first and still only known person to be directly struck by a meteorite. On November 30th, 1954, at approximately 12:45 p.m., so middle of the day, people across central Alabama witnessed this spectacular streak of light blazing through the sky. This massive fireball was later estimated to weigh about 8.5 pounds, and it broke apart as it tore through the Earth's atmosphere. Sonic booms rattled windows. Some witnesses believed an airplane had exploded. This dramatic event was caused by something called a chondrite meteorite, later named the Sylacauga meteorite. I hope I pronounced that right. This was after the nearby town. One fragment of this meteorite hurtled on a collision course toward Earth and towards the unsuspecting woman Anne Hodges. Anne had taken a break from her chores, and she was resting on a sofa inside her home. Wrapped in quilts, she dozed peacefully as the meteorite plunged downward at incredible speed. Its trajectory took it straight through the roof of Hodges' rented house. The first fragment crashed through the roof shingles, then through the wooden ceiling panels, ricocheted off the large console radio in the living room, and finally struck Anne on her left side. The impact of this left a dark, palm-sized bruise roughly shaped like a pineapple. Anne awoke to a sudden explosion of splintered ceiling, dust, and pain. Confused and terrified, she initially believed an appliance had malfunctioned or that some kind of domestic accident had occurred. It was only when neighbors, law enforcement, and later military personnel arrived at her home that the true nature of the object became clear. News of this incident spread quickly. The image of Anne's enormous bruise, alongside the black, jagged stone that had caused it, made front pages across the country. The idea that a meteorite, something usually relegated to science textbooks and stargazing, had come through the roof of a house and struck a woman in her sleep was almost too unbelievable to be true. This is the part of the story where it becomes quintessentially American, where Anne initially disliked the sudden spotlight, but her husband, Eugene, saw an opportunity where they could sell the meteorite and recoup money to repair their damaged home, and perhaps much more. The only problem was the Hodges family were renting their house, and their landlord, named Bertie Guy, claimed ownership of the meteorite because it had fallen onto her property. And as you would imagine, there was no clear precedent in law for ownership of a meteorite. It's unbelievable. You had lawyers weighing in about who owned the meteorite, saying, did property ownership extend from the ground all the way to the heavens? Was the meteorite akin to minerals within the land, or more like a found object? The public wanted Anne to have possession of the meteorite, but eventually the landlord settled out of court, giving up her claim in exchange for $500. That would be just over $6,000 when adjusted for inflation to 2025. The irony was that now that Anne had gotten possession of the meteorite, the public's interest faded and nobody wanted to buy it. So they ended up donating it to the Alabama Museum of Natural History, where it remains today. Despite that brush with fame and the brush with the meteorite, Anne lived a relatively private life afterward, passing away in 1972 at the age of 52 from kidney failure. Her story endures because it highlights the unpredictable nature of life and the vast, indifferent cosmos that surrounds us. Who knows? Maybe someone listening to this podcast will lay down for a nap and a meteorite will come flying through their ceiling. I hope not, and I hope that if it does, you don't get hurt and you can actually make money on eBay with it. But as of now, the first and only meteorite to ever strike a human being occurred 71 years ago this week in history. And now, watch out, crashing through the ceiling is a brand new time capsule. Unfortunately, you cannot make money selling this one, but we're going back 40 years ago this week to December 1st, 1985. What was going on in the world of pop culture back then? Well, let's find out. The number one song was Separate Lives by Phil Collins and Marilyn Martin. This was off of the soundtrack for the movie White Nights. I couldn't find much about Marilyn Martin. I think she was just a lesser-known singer that was on this song. I did find that this song was also recorded by Stephen Bishop. He had several big hits like adult contemporary around that time, like On and It Might Be You, and his version was actually Oscar nominated. This song was another in a string of hits for Phil Collins where he was at the peak of his powers in the mid-1980s, having just released the massive album No Jacket Required, which had songs like One More Night, Take Me Home, Don't Lose My Number, and Susudio. The number one movie was Rocky IV, and you could get into the theater with a ticket costing $3.55. Oh yeah, US versus USSR, Rocky versus Drago. For longtime listeners of the podcast, you know that this is one of the movies that I thought was real, and I thought Apollo Creed, the man himself, was dead, killed by Drago. And then I saw Carl Weathers hosting Saturday Night Live, and I'm like, wait, I thought you were killed. This is total pro-USA type movie with Sylvester Stallone. Nearing the end of the Cold War. The movie was not really critically received well, but who cares? It made over $300 million at the box office in 1985. That's equal to $900 million when adjusted for inflation to 2025. So I'm sure Sylvester Stallone could have wiped his ass with what critics thought of the movie with the amount of money it made. He did follow it up with Rocky V, which I saw in theaters, and the less spoken about that, the better, but we'll move on. The number one TV show was Perry Mason Returns. This was a made-for-TV movie starring Raymond Burr as Perry Mason. Perry Mason was a criminal defense lawyer. That was the character, just in case there are some of you out there that don't know who he was. The original Perry Mason TV show was on for 9 seasons starting in 1957, with Raymond Burr as Perry Mason, fresh off of his battle with Godzilla. And if you were around back then, December 1st, 1985, maybe you're starting to do your holiday shopping. Well, I know one place that you can get a lot of fun stuff, and that is at Zayre. Because for the month of December in 1985, Zayre will be open 24 hours. Well, that must have been fun to work at. Well, if you're heading out to Zayre on a Tuesday at 3 a.m., you can get some TDK blank VHS tapes, $4.47 each. Colorful bangle watches, $6.92 each. But my favorite of all, the Royal Dansk cookies. Every 80s grandparents' house had these, the round blue tin. They still make them now. All the Danish butter cookies on sale for $1.28. Oh man, grab 10. So there you go. If you can't sleep, head out to Zayre, get all that stuff. Maybe hide in the pillow aisle and sleep in Zayre. But that'll wrap up another time capsule. That ends this week in history. But oh, Thanksgiving's not quite done. It's like Jason coming out of the bushes for one last scare, as we have a brand new top 5 looking at the biggest Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade mishaps. Oh, let's get into them. "101 years ago, on November 27th, 1924, we had the very first ever Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, then known as the Macy's Christmas Parade. It was started to celebrate the opening of Macy's largest store in New York City and included live animals from the Central Park Zoo. Despite having live animals there, that was not one of the mishaps from the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. But over the years, with hundreds and hundreds of balloons, thousands and thousands of spectators, there were bound to be some things that did not go well. And of course, I went and found them to tell you all about them on this week's Top 5. So we're looking at Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade mishaps. You know, with most of the Top 5s, they're in no particular order. We've got some honorable mentions. I laughed while researching these. I hope you will laugh as I tell you. So let's get into the honorable mentions for these Thanksgiving Day Parade mishaps. The first honorable mention is 2005, when the M&M's red and yellow balloons got caught in a lamppost, shattering glass and sending it showering down on people below. Another honorable mention is 1971's parade, which had no balloons at all due to high wind and rain, which makes you wonder why you had the parade at all. Another honorable mention is Kermit the Frog's balloon, which was ripped open in 1985 but still made it across the finish line of the parade, only to then, 6 years later in 1991, have a tree branch rip its head open and deflate it, horrifying all of the kids. So yes, Kermit got deflated twice. And the final honorable mention was Sonic the Hedgehog in 1993, smashing into a lamppost, knocking the lamppost over, injuring a police officer and a child, but they were both alright. This was on live TV. Consider it an early viral moment long before social media. So those are the honorable mentions. As you can tell, it's all pretty much balloon related, but the best is yet to come. So let us start off the actual top 5 Thanksgiving Day Parade mishaps with number 1, Felix the Cat. This was the very first mishap in the parade's history. We go all the way back to 1927. This original balloon was made of rubberized fabric filled with air, not helium. Stories differ on whether this was just a cat balloon or if it was the Felix the Cat balloon, but whatever it was, it struck the electrical wires and caught fire. Luckily, no one was injured, but for this being the early days of the parade, when you've got this flaming balloon going over the crowds, it could have easily ended this tradition early. Number 2 is Tomcat. Not Tomcat from Tom and Jerry, just Tomcat. For this, we go back to 1932. In doing this research, I learned that in the early years of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, they would release the balloons at the end of the parade, just let them go. So you'd have all these giant characters just floating away above Manhattan. If you look up the 1932 parade with this Tomcat balloon, it's like the stuff of nightmares. I guess back then it was considered cute, but it's just like if you look up 1920s Halloween costumes that kids probably thought were neat, and it's like stuff out of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies. The story with this balloon is that it got released and there was a pilot flying their plane by, and this pilot, she either wanted to wrangle the balloon that was going, I don't know, the wrong way, or was trying to decapitate it with the propellers. Whatever the choice was, one of the balloon's ropes got caught in the plane's wing and started sending it into a tailspin. But luckily, there was another veteran pilot on the plane that helped to save her life. You imagine if that had been the end for that pilot? I thought I had stupid stories with how I hurt my low back. Could you imagine the story of your death in the newspaper? Tried to decapitate a balloon at a Thanksgiving Day parade with a plane? Number 3 is Popeye the Sailor. Popeye was the beloved sailor man in the cartoons in the 1930s all the way up through the 60s. This story comes from the 1957 parade, which was chilly and rainy, so you've got Popeye the Sailor with his sailor hat. If you look up the Popeye balloon, he's more upright in those. So with it being rainy, his sailor hat collected water. And what ended up happening was, as they turned a corner with the Popeye balloon, his head turned forward with all the water and just dumped on the people below. Luckily, nobody was hurt, but a lot of people were soaked and cold. As a result of this accident with the water, the sailor concave hat was redesigned for future years so that Popeye's hat couldn't collect water and just dump on people. Number 4 is Barney the Dinosaur. For this one, we go back to 1997, the beloved yet extremely annoying purple dinosaur that children of the time loved, but older kids and adults of the time did not love. This one is crazy. So on the 1997 parade, it was very windy, so they're trying to control this big, fat purple dinosaur balloon. They're holding it, and the wind and something ripped a hole into the side of the Barney balloon. So the handlers are trying to keep the balloon stable, and finally the NYPD grab the balloon and tackle it down and start stabbing it with knives to deflate it. They're trying to protect people from getting hit by this big balloon, just all the fabric. The crowds were cheering, the kids were crying. Can you imagine being a kid at that parade? Oh my God, it's Barney, look. And then not only does he start getting deflated, but the cops just start stabbing him. This moment was later immortalized on the internet as Barney's Last Stand. And finally, number 5 on the list of Macy's Thanksgiving Parade mishaps is the Cat in the Hat. For this one, we stay in 1997, that same day with all that wind. The Cat in the Hat balloon was 78 feet long. The wind got a hold of it, slammed it into a lamppost near Central Park West. This caused a 100-pound fixture to fall to the ground, injuring 4 people, including one who spent weeks in a coma. This forced Macy's to have stricter regulations as far as tether strength, balloon sizes, things to do with dealing with wind. So yeah, that 1997 parade was probably the king of all the disasters. But there you have it. Top 5 Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade mishaps. Do you remember any of these? from TV. Obviously, Felix the Cat and Tomcat, those were back almost 100 years ago, so I wouldn't expect anyone to remember those. We go from balloon mishaps and tragedies to the mishap and tragedy of laughter we're going to have as we look back 32 years to a 1993 Subway restaurant employee training video. So get ready to learn how to be a good Subway employee. I can remember my first experiences with the Subway chain of restaurants. We had a couple on Cape Cod in the mid-1990s, but I first really started going there when my high school allowed us to go off campus for senior lunch. And probably 2 minutes or less down the road from the school was a Subway restaurant in a little strip mall. It was owned by a pair of twin brothers that looked like a pair of Super Marios. Shorter, buzz cuts, kind of chunky with these thinner mustaches. What they would do is they gave us a deal, 99 cents for a 6-inch meatball sub. When you're 17, 18-year-old high school students, that's like the greatest thing ever. So a whole bunch of us would go down there pretty much every day for lunch. I can't remember all of us, but I know Steve was there, Matt, Dan, Pete. But most of all, the thing I remember, and he probably knows I'm going to say it, is Greg's love affair with Subway. He would say on most days, and I quote, "I'm going to get 18 inches of meaty pleasure." 30 years later, I can still remember him saying that. Because it'd be $3. You could get 18 inches of meatball sub. I need to get a shirt made of that to give to you, Greg. You'd never wear it. Anyway, this long story is leading into this video that I'm so excited to review. We're going to go back to around that time. This is 1993 and a 30-minute long employee training video for Subway employees. And oh man, is this a good one. So if you've ever wanted to know how to be a really good employee at Subway, I've got it for you. We dive right in with a female narrator with these pictures going across the screen of her describing the customers that would come into Subway. And then we get different music of a montage of hands cutting tomatoes and veggies. And then we get to see someone placing an order at the Subway in 1993, and you get the classic 90s Subway. It wasn't the green and yellow like now, it was orange and yellow, with the subways having the scenes like the maps of Manhattan on the walls. And the narrator, she goes into reasons why customers might choose to not come back to your store, wherever you are, whether you're in fast food or any other restaurant. And the funny thing is, you can tell this is meant for employees because it has the customer complaints of the 1992 year for Subway. The biggest one on here, I'm looking at it, is customer service was 37%. There's some other ones like the store being dirty or the product not being good or something with the Sub Club card. Do you remember those? You'd get stickers. And after you filled up your Sub Club, I think with 10, you get a free 6-inch. But the best thing, it might even be the best thing of this whole video, it's only a minute and a half in. Because one of the complaints on the little pie chart is saying that employees didn't wear gloves or wash their hands. And the very next scene is someone making a sub with no gloves on. It's like, do you not even read these things, what they're complaining about? So after the narrator runs down the things they're going to talk about as far as good customer service goes, we get to the first scenario of a customer coming into this Subway with this younger guy standing behind the counter in his red Subway uniform. So in this one, the guy is saying hello to the customer before going to wash his hands, which is all good. But the narrator says, make sure that you give him your undivided attention when it's a woman that has come in to order. It's like the dialogue and the visuals don't match up on this. And again, the narrator goes over the benefits and importance of washing hands and thoroughly about it. I guess it wouldn't be common sense to some. So she explains why it's important. Because this video is 30 minutes long, they show you how to wash your hands in real time. So it's a little long of how to put the soap on and lather and rinse. Then she gets into the elephant in the room as far as wearing gloves. So this guy in this part of the video is wearing gloves, but the narrator says that they're not required. You could or could not wear them. So I guess that's how it was in '93.
The use of rubber gloves is a topic that frequently arises during any discussion on hand washing. Some of our store owners have their employees wear gloves. If gloves are worn, you must also follow a few sanitary rules. When you wear gloves, your fingers stay clean inside, but the outer surface becomes dirty. A dirty glove can contaminate food just as easily as dirty hands.
I mean, I guess that's true. In '93, I was doing prep work. We didn't always wear gloves. Uh-oh, I know I'm sharing that. Hell, we had people smoking in the prep room back then. But enough about my beginnings in restaurants. A neat little time capsule with this '93 Subway video is this is when they were still doing that thing with the sub rolls where they cut the top out of it and then filled the sub in and then put that little top back on the sub. So instead of slicing the roll down the middle like one slice, they cut like a triangle chunk out of it. I don't know if you remember this, those of you that went to Subway in the '90s, maybe early 2000s. So after they tell you about gloves, then they get into the actual transaction process. It goes into sharing your knowledge of the product with the customer, especially if they don't know what they want. One of the best is that they basically recommend you try to upsell the customers. I mean, I know it's for employees, so we weren't meant to see it. But they say try to gouge the customers as much as you can, offering double meat or a large drink. Not even saying, do you want one? Just saying, what kind of drink? While they're doing this transaction, they do a long pan of the original Subway menu that would be up on the wall. I slowed it down. I tried to see if there were any subs that aren't part of Subway anymore, but no, it's all the same stuff. They really go heavy-handed on the suggestive selling to increase the check size for your customer, giving you when to do it, but then also saying that when you suggest it, it shouldn't annoy them. Like, how many times have you gone into a Subway and they've tried to get you to get something more and it doesn't annoy you? It's like, what are you supposed to say? Oh, thank you, I will spend $5 extra. I didn't even know that I wanted to give you my money. They give you the exact verbiage, so they have the guy that's the employee, and he's just looking into the camera, asking the questions.
When should the following questions be asked?
How about a BMT today? That's a foot long, right? Would you like to try double meat today? And what size drink would you like today?
That's a foot long, right? He's just staring at you creepily. I did have fun when they were talking about the Sub Club card and showing that little dial that you would spin that would shoot out the 2 tickets for a foot long and the 1 for a 6-inch. I'm pretty sure when we used to go there in high school that we had the Sub Club card. They move on to how to count the change for people, so there's nothing really with credit cards. It's the old print receipt popping up from the back of the cash register. This whole thing of watching this transaction with these fictional customers definitely brought back warm memories from the '90s for me, things I didn't think I would miss now. So they go through each part of the transaction, and it takes a while. This is one of those that if you're watching it on YouTube, you could up the speed to 1.5 or even double speed, and you won't miss much because there's a lot of saying something and then a long pause and then saying something. Then they go back and they repeat the whole process in one long form, someone ordering, which I could imagine Subway employees back then like falling asleep while watching this. When they repeat the whole transaction, now it's different people. There's a woman behind the counter, and the guy that comes in looks like he should have been in Revenge of the Nerds. He's very mousy and very suggestible. Where the employee, she's not bullying him, but she's basically already upped him from a 6-inch to a foot long and a more expensive sub. She probably could have just grabbed him and turned him upside down and gotten his wallet to fall out. But of course, this is like a simulation. So you're watching this and thinking, ooh, it'll be that easy to convince a customer to spend more and more money, when in reality, that's not how it's going to go down. Then you get some mind-numbing small talk between the employee and the customer about the weather and how it's warmer out, but the guy's got a long-sleeve button-down shirt and jeans on. Then they talk about his softball team he plays on, and she just happens to know somebody on that team.
Sure turned into a nice day out there.
Yeah, it's a lot warmer out there than they predicted. It's great weather to play softball.
You play softball? What team are you on?
I play on my company's team, Acme International.
Really good friend of mine plays on that team. His name's Martin. I think he's a pitcher.
Yeah, he is. He is. He's been doing a great job this year.
Really? He keeps trying to get me out for a game, but never seem to make it.
Yeah, we have a good time out there.
Yeah, softball's a lot of fun.
Like, Subway makes it seem like every customer that comes in, you're going to be able to upcharge them and you'll know them personally, or like 6 degrees of separation. So that interaction of good customer service ends with the employee saying, come back. And he's like, oh, I will. But now you know they have to, if they've shown you the good, they've got to show you the bad customer service. And this one here, for as unrealistic as the good customer service is, the bad is even worse. Like, I don't know if any of you out there have ever seen anything like this at any fast food place. But before we get to the bad customer service, we've got a few more things you've got to learn. Handling phone calls. They try to make something funny where it's like average people who might be calling, or the guy that invented Subway, and they show his picture.
You never know who's going to call your store. It could be a secretary ordering lunch for the office, someone who wants a BMT to go, or someone who's interested in party items. Or maybe it's even Subway's founder, Fred DeLuca, asking how things are going. Then again, maybe not. The point is,
really trying hard to get the employees to think they're cool. We really get a blast from the past when looking at these phones here. You've got landlines with the cords. You've got someone looking up Subway in the yellow pages to call up. So this woman calls up, she wants a party platter for her office. A lot of the phone call stuff is common sense, being kind and courteous so they can quote-unquote hear your smile through the phone. Ugh. To things like don't interrupt them, ask permission if you can put them on hold. So we get through handling phone calls. Now you've got difficult customers that you've got to deal with. This is probably more realistic. The narrator says that you can try your best with the good customer service, but if you make a mistake and you get a customer with a bad day, and then there's a toilet flushing sound of, well, it's all going down the toilet. Now we get the angry customer and she wants to see the manager. So this lady complains she wanted tuna with no onions and it's littered with onions. She slams the sub on the counter and the employee, he's acting like she's pointing a gun at him. He's like, all right, let me get this straight.
your job is not to point the finger of blame. You're investigating facts and finding a solution.
I want something done about it.
Okay, let me just get this straight. You ordered a foot-long tuna with no onions, and someone put onions on it, is that right?
That's right. I got this sub this morning. I can't eat it.
The best part, besides this guy acting like she pulled a gun on him, is that she says she got the sub a few hours ago and is just now bringing it back. Like, how do you know she didn't go home and put onions on the tuna? The narrator says you need to empathize, saying things like, I can understand why this would make you upset. Can you imagine going into Subway, complaining, and then they talk to you like that? Like, that's gonna calm you down? It's like, don't patronize me with that. So the employee starts making her a new sandwich, and suddenly she's now all happy. And she's happy, and he's giving her a free drink, but of course he's making the new sandwich with no gloves on, and they don't show him washing his hands before. I guess you have to assume he did. But it's like, if you've already got someone that's pissed off at you, why wouldn't you at least go through the process of washing your hands and putting on gloves, just in case? So as we get near the end of this video, this is where you get the back-to-back bad and good customer service. They started off with the bad restaurant, so someone's coming in, you hear the bing of the door when it opens. There's loud music playing, and some dude, of course he's got his hat backwards because that makes you bad in the 90s. And he's just standing there on the phone. Like, how realistic is that?
Excuse me?
I gotta go. I'll call you back later.
Finally.
Hi, what can I get you?
Hi, what do you recommend? I'm in the mood for something light today.
How about salad?
Salad. Okay, what kinds are good?
Oh, okay. Depends what you like.
No kidding.
So this female customer comes in, and the guy behind the counter is just standing there on the phone, not even paying attention. Like, it's so unrealistic. And she's got this dialogue in her head talking about how he doesn't even see me. Finally, this guy comes over to serve her, and he's like chewing gum, and his shirt's untucked, and he just looks like a slob. And this goes on for an excruciatingly long time, where he asks her about the bread, no gloves, cuts it, and you have to watch him cut that little chunk of the middle of the bread out. They really hammer home how bad the customer service is. It's so awkward and long. The guy overloads her sandwich with lettuce, and you can hear her in her head complaining about it. So finally this ends. She's mad. He forgets to ask her about the sub club card until she's like out the door. And all the while it's just screaming electric guitars. So, according to the Subway management, loud music, backwards hats, and chewing gum makes you bad. Then we go back to the good customer service. They've got like this softer adult contemporary music playing. The woman has her hat or visor facing forward. She immediately gets off the phone. This employee, she does wash her hands, but of course no gloves. The lady asks if she's seen her somewhere before, and the customer compliments how clean the store is, which I guess maybe 1 in 100 people might say. And so this interaction goes perfectly. The narrator says, "Congratulations, you now know how to do perfect customer service." The narrator ends by saying, "Your specific store manager will give you more instructions on what to do," while the two actors/Subway employees from the video stand there staring at the camera.
Your store owner or manager will give you additional instructions on the specific rules of your store. Just remember, whenever you serve customers, imagine you can trade places with them. Then, act as you would like to be treated.
And then they magically transform from their Subway outfits into regular clothes. And they look all shocked and excited. And it wraps up. We get all the credits written and directed by Wendy Wallachowicz, Carol Forleo. You find out that the employees, the man was Marty Casey, the woman was Nancy Shin, and the bad man employee was Jim Riccio. It wraps up. The last thing you see is it says it's from Doctors Associates Incorporated is the company that made this. I looked it up. That is the name of the parent company of Subway. But there you have it, the 1993 Subway employee training video, or for Greg, 30 minutes of meaty pleasure. I highly recommend it. It's one of those that I can only do so much justice to this. You have to watch it because it's such a time capsule of the period. You'll definitely get a kick out of the old tech, the old uniforms, the old Subway look. If you enjoy these review segments, don't worry, it won't be that long before I find another employee training video that I can review/make fun of. But until next week, that's going to wrap up episode 222 of the In My Footsteps podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for making it to the end. I hope you've enjoyed your weekly dose of GenX nostalgia. I always enjoy researching and finding new things that I think you might like from pop culture. And don't worry, the train will not stop rolling. Next week is episode 223. We're going to look back at the 30th anniversary of the movie Toy Story. We're going to take a look back at what is said to be the worst-selling video game of all time, Uncle Henry's Playhouse. And we'll look back at the top 5 worst Christmas specials ever. And man, some of these are going to be so funny, just how freaking awful they are. So all that's coming up next week on episode 223 of the podcast. But of course, if you enjoy my work, if you enjoy the podcast, I've got so much content everywhere. I have 10 books, including my newest book, In Their Footsteps, The Interesting People, Places, and Events of Cape Cod History. There's a link in the podcast notes for you to order your copy. You can order any of those books. Shop small for the holidays. It doesn't get much smaller than one person, and that's me. You can check out my blog. It's got Initial Impressions 2.0 every week. I've got more than 700 YouTube videos. And I'll have a whole lot more news on the film side of my career starting at the first of the year. If you want to support my content journey, you can become a member on Patreon for $5 a month. You can sign up for free, join the free tier. I've got a lot of stuff there as well. You can also go buy me a coffee. Donations there, they're not recurring. You can go as little as $1. Of course, if parting with your hard-earned money isn't feasible, and I totally get that, one of the best things you can do is sharing my content. I'm constantly on social media sharing the podcast and YouTube videos and blogs and books. All you have to do is hit repost or share. It doesn't take long. It takes the same amount of time as it does to leave a thumbs up on it, which does nothing to help me. But no matter what, I will constantly be marketing myself. And who knows, maybe next year, 2026, I get more time to do this. You got to look at calculated risks, taking a little more time to bet on yourself while not totally cutting off your nose to spite your face. Because there's no expiration on your dreams. Chase them as long as your legs will keep moving. Happy early birthdays from when this podcast goes live to my friend Michael, a great photographer. If you need a photographer for anything, check him out at Atlantic Light Images. Happy early birthday to Michael. Also, happy early birthday to my cousin Donna. She has given me so much support through my years, through my author events. She's come from more than an hour away, driving down to Cape Cod to see me at book events. So I'm so grateful for her. So happy early birthday. And everyone else out there, don't stress. Enjoy the holiday season. I hope it's filled with family and friends, because that's the most important thing. Gifts are great, but the people are better. The days may be shorter and colder and probably snowy at some point soon, but get out and enjoy the sun if you can. Vitamin D, it's at a premium this time of year. Stave off depression as best you can. I will do my best to try to bring some laughter and a little bit of knowledge every week. But until next time, remember, in this life, don't walk in anyone else's footsteps. Create your own path and enjoy every moment you can on this journey we call life, because you never know what tomorrow brings. Thank you all again for listening. This has been the In My Footsteps podcast. I am Christopher Setterlin, but you already knew that. And I'll talk to you all again soon.